Hi everybody, it's Katina and I am here for another session of Ask a Clarinet Teacher at the Clarinet Project. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. And if you don't have any questions, I will just go ahead and start chattering away about things. There we go, we have a little more light. I was actually outside before I got in here and it is really hot out there. So I'm going to show you one of these little tricks that I have as not just a YouTuber, but I use them on stage. So if you're somebody like me that tends to have skin that gets really wet, they have these little sheets and I actually use them mainly when I'm on stage when I perform, because the lights on stage are very hot and sometimes I'll sweat when I'm playing and it can actually be a little distracting when I'm performing. So I just get these at the drugstore and I just use them and I keep them in my clarinet case. So I saw myself on the screen just now and I'm just gonna do a little bit of this. You did not come here for a makeup tutorial, but it is something that I keep handy that I actually use a lot. I like to talk about products that I use a lot as a clarinet player and as a clarinet teacher, and that actually is one of them. So they're just little, they're called oil absorbing sheets, but I like to think of it not so much as oil, but as maybe just like a little light glisten of sweat, because that's even better. All right, so let's jump in and answer some questions. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see what you're saying. Cheese Bob Gaming says, hello, I've been not tonguing on my clarinet for too long and I keep forgetting how to. So let's definitely talk about articulations. And just a couple of highs to everybody so that I can give a shout out. So hi to Enclave Brave, nice to see you. And Horse Craver's here, hello, hello. Tyler's here. Epic Fails, hi. Cheese Bob Gaming, hi. Isabello Abondo plays the clarinet too. Nice to see you. And Jelly says hi. So everybody welcome, and let's jump in with the articulation question. So Cheese Bob Gaming, you've been tonguing on my clarinet for too long and you keep forgetting how to. So let's talk about some of the things that I notice the most with tonguing problems. Clarinet Teacher. Where's my clarinet? It is in the case because, as I said, I was outside enjoying the day before I got here. So articulations on the clarinet are very tricky, and a lot of people hear the stops in the sound, and before they actually know how to properly articulate, they recreate that stop in the sound with whatever tools they have in their toolbox. Now, sometimes those are, unfortunately, the wrong tools for what you need to do. So here's some of the things I notice. People will puff their air. So if they have 4 quarter notes, they'll go right? And that is definitely something we want to avoid as clarinet players. We want to keep these long, steady air streams, and you use your tongue to interrupt the vibration of the reed. So you're tonguing the tip of your tongue to the tip of the reed, but you have to keep that air moving through. So it's more like this. So try that at home with me now. So take a deep breath. We'll do 4 beats for a whole note. And just do the whole note first. 1, 2, ready, go. Now, keeping that stream of air moving, we're going to interrupt it with the tongue by saying like that. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. So keep the air moving. And it's actually good to practice this without the clarinet. Another fun way to practice it, and I hope I have one in my case as an example, I might not with me today, is to use a coffee straw, those little coffee stirrer straws, or a cocktail straw. The cocktail straw actually works better than the coffee stirrer straw because that's sort of like a double-barreled straw. You want the very small, thin straw, just the one hole in there, and you can practice articulating on that and keeping that airstream steady and letting your tongue just briefly do the t for stopping that sound. So that is the most important part with articulation in my book, keeping the air moving. So you don't want to do the puffs of air. Now, that being said, sometimes people are almost there and they do the puff of air and the articulation at the same time. So it sounds like this, like you're spitting watermelon seeds or something like that. So, and that's actually a really fun way to teach articulation for people that can't get their tongue on the reed yet. Remember, keep that airstream moving, and then you're just going to interrupt the vibration of the reed with your tongue, just tapping or flicking the tip of the reed. And I like to use lots of different words, and I like to ask all of you guys what your teachers have said or what you have found that works for you when you solve problems like articulation issues, because we all have different ways of talking about it and we all have different ways of absorbing information. Another problem that I see with articulations that's a huge bummer for clarinet players is the glottal stop. People will actually cut off their throat. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see it. They'll go like this, like that, and that is hard to fix. Once again, I have people do those long tones. I have a new student that started with me yesterday, and we play this game where it's how long can you hold a long note for? And so just work on holding that long note and letting the tongue skip off the reed. It'll feel kind of scary at first because you're so used to stopping the air, but just keep working on keeping the air moving and just using your tongue for the interruption to stop the reed from vibrating. So those are the ones that I see where it's usually air or throat related. The other articulation issue I see is people take the tip of their tongue, and instead of hitting the tip of the tongue to the tip of the reed, they lodge it behind their bottom front teeth. Well, yeah, not back teeth, that would be hard to do, but they lodge it behind their front teeth on the bottom, and then they tongue with the middle part of their tongue, and that's called anchor tonguing. That will slow you down. Now, there's some people that are quite successful anchor tonguers, but for most people that I have worked with, it slows you down. So getting that tongue out from behind your teeth to use the tip of the tongue to tip of the reed is what you want to do. So if that is something that you're doing and you're not using the tip of the tongue on the tip of the reed, I suggest an exercise called Taste the Reed. I will make sure that I share it eventually. I have one written out on my Musescore scores, if you can go find it there, where you just play an open G for a while, you keep that air moving, and then you taste the reed with the tip of your tongue. Now, for some of my students, I will literally have them taste the reed, and we pick whatever we want to soak the reed in, like an old reed that's going to be a throwaway reed anyway. You can use mouthwash to get a minty reed, or you can use Kool-Aid to get a cherry flavored reed, but that also helps some people get that concept of tasting the reed with the tip of their tongue. So those are some of my articulation tips for just getting in the right place. Okay, let's do another question. That was a good one. All right, so Epic Fails, haven't been in here a long time. Good to see you. Cheesebug Gaming says hi. Jelly says hi. Isabella says, do I speak Spanish? No. I do not speak Spanish. Actually, I have a couple key phrases in Spanish that I can say. So when I used to live in Miami and I used to teach in Miami, I could say things like, no entiendo, no habla español, or ¿Dónde es Nicolás? Because sometimes my student wouldn't be at the lesson, so I'd have to say, where are they? So those are basically the things I can say in Spanish. My goal was to do Duolingo this summer, which I haven't done to kind of get my Spanish going. I have played in orchestras in Miami and Puerto Rico, so I can understand Spanish enough in an orchestra rehearsal so that I never get called on by the conductor. I never ever want to get noticed by the conductor. I play a lot of second clarinet. My one and only job is to make that first clarinet player sound amazing. So I just try and ride that storm of not speaking Spanish out as long as I can. So yeah, when I'm in an orchestra, I know things like ocho bass and stuff like that, ocho bass, ocho bus, another time and things like that, just because the conductor says those things a lot. But no, I don't speak Spanish. I'm sorry. So Isabella, you're Colombian. Oh, I have a good friend from Colombia. Michael O'Brien says hello. Okay, Tyler, I was wondering how you should oil the bore of a wooden clarinet and how often. That's a great question. So I actually am going to be, as always, totally and completely honest with all of you. I don't oil my bore. It's not because I have any big opinion about it. It's because I'm kind of scattered, a little bit forgetful, and slightly lazy. I don't think it's a lazy thing. It's more like I'm not good at time management. So I have high hopes and dreams of oiling my bore. I do, I swear, but I just never get around to it. So, but I do have all the equipment and everything I need to oil my bore. I kind of justify it by saying I live in a very humid environment, so I'm hoping that I don't need to oil my bore as much as I did when I lived in, let's say, New York City, where it was forced heat and everything was very dry. So for oiling your bore, what you're going to want to have is a dedicated swab for oiling your bore. And then I use if I ever do. Actually, I have oiled my bore a long time ago, but you hit a certain age and it's like, I can't say I oiled my bore because I did it, 20 years ago or 15 years ago. But when I used to oil my bore, we'll do it that way, I had a dedicated swab just for bore oiling, and I used almond oil. I don't think I have my little kit around. I have actually a kit with me. Because I did want to do that this summer too, just like learning Spanish. So you put a little bit of oil on the swab. You don't do a lot, just a couple drops on the swab. You pull it through the clarinet. I think you let it sit overnight. And from what I understand, one of the things you have to watch for is not having too much oil on that swab because you don't want it getting on your pads. So it just is a little bit of oil that you need to do. Now, most of the people that I know that oil their bores do it once a year, so you don't have to do it very much. If any instrument I need to do it on is my bass, I don't play my bass as frequently as I do with my B flat, so actually that is one of the instruments I should be doing it on. So yes, once a year, not too much oil on the swab, and that's pretty much what you need to do with oiling your bore. It's not hard. It's a very quick and simple thing to do, and actually it is highly recommended because it keeps your clarinet, a wooden clarinet, in good shape. Just like you polish your wooden furniture, it's polishing the inside of your wooden clarinet, so it is recommended to do it. Okay, next question. Okay, Jelly has a message retracted. Jeremy, I'm starting an online band camp soon. Any jazz band or chamber music tips? Ooh, that's a hard one. If it was a question that went like this, I'm starting a band camp, any jazz or chamber music tips, I would jump right in. But for online, I don't quite know how your online band camp is going to do it, and how they're going to run those rehearsals, and how you're going to do any performances. So I will tell you what we did at the Mason Summer Clarinet Academy, and hopefully that helps. So I will answer your question as the chamber music question. What we did at the Mason Summer Clarinet Academy was we had small clarinet ensembles. We had 2 small ensembles and then a big ensemble of all the clarinet players. And we rehearsed online. And how I rehearsed it, and it's a little unclear from your question. Are you running the camp or are you participating in the camp? So if you can answer that question and let me know, Jeremy, then I can answer this one better. So I will give you my perspective as somebody that ran the camp. So when we did rehearsals with Zoom, and pretty much any platform that we're going to use for having online interactions, there's delay and we can't play together, unfortunately, which is very sad. And once we get through coronavirus, we'll be able to play wonderful music with each other again. Right now we're on a pause. We just have to revisit it in more creative ways. So what we would do is I would play the part along with somebody, and they would play it on their side on mute, so they could hear me, but I could not hear them. And then I'd have people play it individually going down the line by themselves. So there was a lot of individual playing with people, and we hired a video engineer to put all of the videos together of people. So they submitted a video, and he put together a product of everybody playing together. And that was the first time everybody actually heard each other playing together. So that's how we did our online camp. So Jeremy, I'm just going to peek. Okay, so you're participating. So I think once you get in there, you'll know more about what they're doing with chamber music and jazz ensemble. So for everybody here, let's look forward to the future, and I'll give you some tips for playing with chamber music, because a big part of my career is playing chamber music. It's my favorite. I love chamber music. I love orchestra too, but I feel like I get to communicate more and interact more as a chamber musician. So with chamber music, the biggest thing that I find that helps the most is blend. You want to get inside the sound of the people that you're playing with. Now, of course, we play clarinet, so we don't have the same sound as a violin. So if you're playing the Mozart Clarinet Quartet, for example, you want to get that beautiful, rich, dark sound of the clarinet just to fill in with what the string players are doing. It's just a wonderful, magical experience being able to play chamber music and try and get inside everybody's sound and play together with them. So the blend includes includes playing in tune with them. And the reason why I prefer to talk about blending with people is that's a little bit easier for us to hear than just say play in tune. When we play in tune, when we focus on playing in tune, we tend to focus more on am I sharp, am I flat, which is important too. So I'm not discounting that. But if you work on blending, I have found that I and my students that I'm coaching play better in tune because it's a whole sound concept. Now, there will be intonation problems. So if you're having trouble tuning after you work on blending, that's when you go in and you fix it and you take that time to communicate with the people that you're playing with about blending and tuning. So absolutely, you're going to need to be paying attention to intonation, blend. The other thing is rhythm. So we all have idiosyncrasies when we play personally, but also our instruments do as well. For instance, when you're playing a bass clarinet, there will be a slight delay from when you articulate and when the sound speaks. The same thing with B-flat clarinet. Pianists notice this when you play with piano players, and string players notice this a lot as well. So I tend to anticipate the beat a little bit more when I play with strings and piano because I have a tendency just to be a little bit late due to my articulations. Another trick that I found that I love is when you can watch people's fingers. If you're playing, let's say you have a flute player sitting across from you because you're playing a woodwind quintet, watch their fingers. And I will actually rehearse slowly with people that I have unison 16th note runs with to try and line up, and I will watch their fingers. It helps. Get your head out of the music, memorize as much as you can. You'll find that if you practice things a lot, you'll start to memorize it anyway. So if I'm playing a lick over and over again that's really hard, I figure I might as well just stop looking at the music and start memorizing it. So watching people's fingers really helps. Looking at people's eyebrows really helps. You'll find people really do a lot of communicating with their eyebrows, breathing communications. We've got a part coming up here together, communication. So eyebrows are great to watch. And another thing for ensemble playing for all of us is how do we communicate with people and how do we talk with people? When we are in ensembles together, sometimes our emotions can get keyed up a little bit. So I find instead of saying something like, wow, that sounded like poop, what is happening over there? You can say something more like, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing there? Or I'm having a little trouble lining that up. Or my favorite trick, and I do this with teaching too, can we try that again for me for intonation? When really it might be for maybe the fingers aren't lining up right away. So obviously you want to communicate clearly with people, but always choose the kindest way. And I find asking questions is a great way of going about communicating with people because it's not making assumptions. I'm really terrible at making assumptions. It's the worst. Ask my poor kids, I'll make an assumption about something and they're like, but I did do the dishes. So asking a question sometimes can help elevate that and keep the lines of communication open and productive. There's a really great book by Liz Lerman called The Critical Response Method. She's a dancer, and she was finding what was frustrating is that when she would do a performance, critics would trash her performance and there wasn't any critique coming out of it. And yet on the other side, when she'd ask her friends for advice, like, hey, how did you like that performance? They'd be like, that's great, you're wonderful. And so she wasn't getting critique from the other side. So Liz Lerman, Critical Response Method, check it out. It's a great book, and she has a whole program of how to work together in an ensemble so that you can choose kind words and productive words and rehearse efficiently. My teacher, David Krakauer, sums it up the best, which is, and I'm about to say a bad word, everybody, but it's basically don't be an asshole. Just be a good person. And you'll find that there are 1,000 amazing clarinet players in the world, but it's the ones that are an amazing clarinet player and a kind person that's easy to work with that get hired. So that's my very long nutshell advice for rehearsing. But that was a good question. All right, moving on. Okay. Band camp. Okay, I'll taste the reed anyways. Yeah, see what the reed tastes like and report back to me. Jelly, my reed gets too wet after a while and starts to squeak. Is there a way to get that to stop or prevent the wet reed? Oh my gosh, that definitely has happened to me. And I've had students, some people salivate more than other people. So with the reed getting wet, I actually take the reed off. Sometimes they get waterlogged and I swap it out with another reed. I'll take the reed off and I'll wipe it on my pants sometimes, and I'll sort of scrape it off with my finger. I'll do this sort of thing. Okay. Another thing you can do with the reed before, so maybe you need to change your reed breaking in process. I'm looking for a piece of paper so I can show you what I do here. So with the breaking in process, because you don't want ink on what I'm about to show you, so this is not a great piece of paper. So maybe breaking in the reed will help a little bit. I don't know. So you can soak the reed in water for maybe a minute and then dry it off. And then you can polish it on a piece of paper. So I put it on a hard surface and then I go like this, and that'll polish up those ends of the fibers in the reed that tend to, when they cut the reed, they're open and they absorb water. If you think about cane, its whole purpose is to absorb water. So if you polish it up a little bit, that might help prevent it from absorbing too much water. And then another option to consider would be trying a synthetic reed, like a Leger reed. D'Addario has some synthetics coming out. I think this synthetic is from Silverstein. So there's a bunch of synthetic reeds in the market, and they might help you with that waterlogging problem. So that's how I do it with me. I polish those reeds to help keep that absorption low. Okay, bye Cheesebug Gaming, have a good dinner. Okay, Tyler says, thank you, you are welcome. And then David says, I love the clarinet, it brings me so much joy to play. Me too, I'm so happy to hear it. Horse Craver says, hi, and Jelly says, thank you. So everybody, great questions. Thank you so much. I just, it's really one of my favorite things of the week is looking forward to hearing your questions. I really enjoyed talking about rehearsing in an ensemble. That is something that I love doing, and hopefully we will be doing it sooner rather than later. And for those of us, and I didn't really get to your question, Jeremy, about jazz ensemble. If you're doing improvising and you have experience improvising, great. I am not the right person for you for that. I have improvised in the past, and I took a jazz improv class at Manhattan School of Music for classical music majors. And the biggest advice I got for those that are new to improvising or uncomfortable with improvising is to put a lot of rests in there. My jazz teacher told me that, and it was very helpful. And when I've had to improvise in my career, I do a lot of rests and I do the eyebrows, and then people are like, wow, she's so smart, she's thinking about it. But really, I'm just kind of waiting it out. But writing out, transcribing jazz solos from famous jazz players is a great way to get an idea of what these musicians are doing, and it really helps your ear. So pick a Benny Goodman tune or Felix Pikely, find one of his videos on YouTube, and then try and transcribe that. Pull your clarinet out and figure out the notes and play along, and then write that out, especially if you're a visual learner. That really, really helps. So those are my jazz tips too. All right, so I have one more question. Horse Craver says, when I'm holding my clarinet on the lower part where my thumb goes, oh, it makes it hurt and turn. Any tips on what to do? So are you talking about your thumb rests? I'm holding my clarinet on the lower part where your thumb goes. Are you talking about right here with your thumb rest right there? And it hurts? Okay. The thumb rest placement is not an ideal placement. Ideally, if you were to shake your hand out, do you see how my thumb is kind of lined up with my index finger? That is where we would want our thumb to go. But if I put my hand under here, you see how the thumb is pulled down a little bit. So I have a stretch down. If you have an adjustable thumb rest, put it in a position that gets you as close to here as possible. That's what you want to do. And then if it's hurting on your skin part, you can try a thumb rest cushion. I don't use one just because it doesn't really fit on mine and it doesn't bother me. I have a big callus on my thumb now, but you can use a thumb rest cushion and that will help there. Now, if it's hurting though in here, that's a little different. And so that's the weight of the clarinet, or it could be how you're sitting. So that is something where you can consider using a neck strap to take a little bit of that weight off. What is the loop in the thumb rest for? That is for a thumb rest, or that's for, a neck strap. So a neck strap has a little hook. If you're talking about mine doesn't have the loop. It's just from the adjustable thumb rest. But if you have that loop that some people do, that's for a neck strap. I actually don't use a neck strap because for me, it puts weight on my neck and it makes my neck hurt a little bit. So, but I also don't have the thumb problem. So you can try a neck strap and see if that helps. But that would be if you're having pain going into your hand here. If you're having pain just on your thumb, try the thumb rest cushion if that doesn't help. My teacher, when I studied with Yehuda Gilad, would actually have us do hand strengthening exercises. So when you do the dishes in your sink with the sponge, squeezing the sponge is a good exercise. Stress balls are good exercises for building hand strength. They have these little ones for fingers for guitar players, but that's for finger strength. And you have to be careful with those to not strain your fingers. One of the things that is interesting about ergonomics when we talk about playing the clarinet is sitting up straight and putting your shoulders back and having good posture can actually help your thumb not hurt as well. One last thing, some people frown upon it, I do not, is I actually will put my clarinet on my knees depending on what I'm playing to just take a little bit off of my hands. So that's also a possibility as well. So you could, lift weights a little bit, work on building up some of your upper body strength and your arm strength to see if that helps as well. But if it's just this part of your thumb, try a thumb rest cushion and that'll help as well. All right. Thank you everybody for coming. Oh, I didn't hit return, but I do, and I need to say it because I never do because I'm bad at these things. I have a Patreon account. If you want to support me on Patreon, that's great. If you don't or you can't, that's totally fine, but it's out there for anybody that does. And so Horse says, oh my gosh, my uncle is outside because we own a whole campground and an apple tree farm and a Christmas tree farm. Be right back. Okay, well, I'm going to see you later, Horse Craver. And that sounds amazing. You should totally have a chamber music festival at your farm. I'm going to head out. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Comments, questions, and you can always ask them all week long. You can put them in videos. And I will hit return so you can see the Patreon link if you want to. But like I said, you don't have to do anything there. I will still be here either way. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.